Let's get to today's news of the day, and that is that Dan Lanning is getting a raise at Oregon.
He's rich. And if you're asking, didn't he
getting
just get a raise? Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
And now he got another one.
So Lanning...
What an opportunity.
He's signed through 2030. Mm-hmm. It's not even an extension. They just basically he just agreed. He's like, hey,
give me more money.
The Ducks were like, hey, we want to give you more money. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
So he goes from 7.4-ish a year, and this is not exact because of incentives and things.
It's all kinds of stuff.
He's going up to just short of $11 million per year. And he remains his buyout is $20 million.
Yeah, I think the only people above him are the national title bros, the Dabos and the Kirbys. This is now, depending on incentives and stuff, he's a top 4, top 5 coach in the country when it comes to the paycheck.
Yeah, so well deserved.
Well, he's gotten in 4 years, he's gotten an $8 million raise.
Well, I think some might say not well deserved because some would say, well, win something.
Yeah.
Well, he just won the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And he was the number 1 seed in the tournament. But I get that sentiment. Sure. It's just that when you're Oregon, they had 2 coaches in 31 years with Rich Brooks and Mike Bellani.
And then there was
they had 5 coaches in 11 years. Yeah. And when that happens, you're like then you find a guy that you really like and you really think is the future for you. You do everything you can to keep him, and you got to give the Ducks credit. They have done that.
Yeah.
They have been very proactive in kind of stiff-arming the poachers, as it were. Not that Dan Lanning can be easily poached, but you don't leave that door open, and the Ducks really haven't.
Well, you think about it, right? They've gotten better every year that he's been there. Again, they won the Big Ten, won the conference for the first time under him. Number 1 team in the country. Obviously didn't go well in the playoff, but again, they've continued to get better. They recruit at a level that we've never seen at Oregon. You have all the resources you could want in the new NIL. You're now in the biggest or the second biggest conference, whatever you want. You're in one of the Power 2. So I'm with you. Why would you dink around with this? Now, I don't think anyone's worth $11 million. That's so much money. But you're only worth what someone else is willing to pay you, and someone would pay Dan Lanning $11 million, and
that's the market.
And this shuts it down.
Yeah, that's the market.
Yeah.
I mean, and plus, I think that with the momentum that he has in recruiting, and they were just the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. I know the game against Ohio State still stings, but dude, I mean, you gotta be proactive. Keep this guy to see where this thing goes.
Exactly,
because he's taking it. It seems like it's on a quite the upward trajectory.
Yeah, and remember, I think the average time for a coach to win his first national championship is like 7 years at a program. So, yeah, I mean, Lanning obviously has had nice success, but I even said this last year when people say he's the best coach in the, top 2 coach in the country. I was like, man, let's pump the brakes on that. But again, I think it's trajectory. You see this all the time in sports. Smart teams sign extensions. Right? You don't wait and be the Cincinnati Bengals, because when you wait to franchise tag a guy and you wait for 4 other people to sign it, the cost goes up. Salaries in college are going to keep going up. So it does behoove you to get out in front of something and just be like, look, we're going to take care of you. And again, it gives you stability on the recruiting path. In a very unstable world of college football, it's nice to know that your guy isn't going anywhere and you can sell that to recruits. You can now sell that your guy turned down Alabama, which, maybe not true, but he's not the coach at Alabama. And you can say, if he turned down Alabama and we're giving him $11 million and we were the number 1 team last year and we have the best facilities and we continue to improve them, like, what are you questioning? You really can't. There's not a lot of schools that could say that. Even last year with Ohio State before they won the title, I'm sure for some recruits, there was some like, hey, is Ryan Day going to be the guy here? I think Alabama certainly has that with Kalen DeBoer. I guarantee someone down in the SEC world right now is like, hey, just so you know, you go to Alabama and you have one more bad year with Kalen DeBoer. Florida State's dealing with this 1 year after giving Mike Norvell that contract. Yeah. I guarantee people are like, well, I don't know.
Didn't they give him $10 million a year?
Yeah.
Well, I was just looking at the preseason top coaches in college football 2024, and it's funny how quickly it has changed just by this season.
Yeah.
So this was before the start of this last season where Ryan Day won it. Ryan Day was actually on the list, but he was 10th.
He's not 10th anymore.
He was behind Lance Leipold, Lane Kiffin, He was behind Norvell. Norvell was ahead of Lanning. And now Norvell, what did they do? Did they win 2 games?
I think they won 3.
I mean,
it was the first time a top. I think they won 2.
I think they went 2-10.
I was gonna say, I believe it's the first time a top 10 team won or lost 10 games
after winning 10 games.
So they would have been 2-10. Never been done.
Very impressive.
yeah, 10-3, 13-1, 2-10. So he, I mean, does anybody? He's a good coach, but does anybody think he's a top 5 coach? He was ranked 5th at the start of the season. Now Ryan Day is probably number 2 behind Kirby Smart because he won a title.
Yeah.
So
you got to be careful with the
do.
ebbs and flows of you haven't won anything or if you do win something.
It's a year-to-year thing. But what
is.
I would say is, even when it's a year-to-year thing, the same names are always in consideration, and one of those is Dan Lanning.
Yes.
It is. It's Kirby's number 1. Ryan Day's probably 2. That's probably what you can say now.
All you need to know about why you gave him $11 million is if a job came open in the country, LSU, Alabama, Florida, whatever, all the best jobs. On the short list of candidates, top 3, Dan Lanning would be on everyone's list, which is why you give him $11 million.
So if you said Kirby's 1 and Day is 2, you would have an argument over who is number 3. But the names that would be brought up, given each year you have the hot name, maybe the SMU coach next year pops in there because they have another specialty, whatever. Yeah. But generally, it's Lanning, Sark, DeBoer.
Norvell before last year.
Yeah, but he's not. I'm saying now.
Yeah, not anymore.
So he's like the like every year there's always a Norvell. I'm saying like the names that continually pop up every year. It's Lanning, Dabo will be in there. He had a resurgent year.
I mean,
Sark, DeBoer, and maybe we always talk about Whittingham.
Yeah, but he's getting old. I mean, it's a very short list.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah, and he's on there. In fact, he made for a lot of people. Him and Sark are probably because if you put age and all of it in there. Because Kirby's not going anywhere, and DeBoer coming off the Rocky year. If you said right now that, let's say Kirby Smart retires at Georgia. Hey, you know what? Screw this. I'm done. The top 2 names that would pop up would be Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, I think Lanning would be a bigger name than Sark.
Probably.
Because he was the DC there.
The ties.
Well, and he's younger.
Yeah.
But, Lanning's going to be the hot name for any big job.
Yes.
But, you can make the case he's the 3rd best coach in the country, and I know a lot of people scoff at that.
What has he won?
Exactly, but he is. I mean, he's right there.
He's rolling.
Maybe
now.
DeBoer.
Yeah. Well, Sark hasn't won anything either. So
who would you say right now is the 3rd best coach in the college football, behind Kirby Smart and Ryan Day? Who are you choosing? I might go DeBoer, but Lanning's right there.
I would be hard for me not to say Sark.
And then, Sark's in there. I don't
put Sark.
I find him.
I do, but he's been more successful. So
he has, but I think Lanning's I honestly think Lanning's a better coach. But,
well, and if you think that Lanning's going to eclipse him, then he would be your pick.
Yeah, I do think Lanning would eclipse Sark.
Yeah.
And I also think that in a huge game, boy, there's nobody I want less than Sark.
Yeah. Well, but I can say that about Dan Lanning too.
Yeah, but he's 38.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
and not coaching.
And there's a difference between maybe who I think is the best and who I would want. I'll say this: if I was starting a program from scratch, there's not many guys that I would pick above Lanning because I think he's got there's because like you can say X's and O's and game plans and all that, but being a coach is more than just being a guy that like Lane Kiffin might be the best offensive mind in college football. He wouldn't be my first choice. Lanning doesn't have a lot of flaws right now.
Oh. Freeman, forgot him.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman.
But he's kind of that hot name now because of the one season that they had.
Yep.
Because after the Northern Illinois game, nobody would have said Marcus Freeman.
Nope.
Other couple of names I forgot, but they do kind of pop in every year is Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Both very good coaches.
Some of the shines come off of Kelly, even though his guy won a Heisman 2 years ago.
Anyway, congratulations to Dan Lanning getting more money. Maybe you can ask him about it the next time he comes on.
By the way, speaking of who's probably falling from grace harder than anyone is Lincoln Riley. You had this conversation 3 years ago. Lincoln Riley's in the top 3.
Yeah.
Now everyone's like, Lincoln Riley?
Who?
Yeah, what the hell's that guy?
What's he done?
It is a fickle business.